Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. So what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, recently somebody asked me, where do I get my inspiration from for these YouTube tutorials? And the truth is I get them from everywhere, from nature, from just being out there in the open air, taking the dog for a walk, reading through art books, but sometimes I get inspiration from you guys. Now recently I was going through our Facebook group looking at some of your lovely paintings and I came across this painting by Jane Breyer and I thought I've got to have a go at that. So this painting was taken from one of our recent outdoor painting retreats at the beautiful Michelin Priory. Now this place we've been to quite often. I think this was our 4th visit. It's a stunning medieval manor with parts of it dating back to the 13th century, and there's always plenty of lovely things to paint. It's also very handy because it's only about 20 minutes up the road from us. So we're going to be having a go at painting this lovely little scene, but I also want to talk to you a little bit about how we can use body colour like gouache or acrylic in our watercolour paintings. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. So here's the lovely reference photo which was taken by Margot on the day. Today's materials. My paper is some Fabriano Artistico. It's cold press finish, 100% cotton, 300 pound, super thick so won't need stretching. But of course, any decent watercolour paper will do. And my colours today are cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, burnt umber, cobalt blue, some Payne's grey, sap green, dark steam purple and magenta. But any bright pink will do, some quinacridone rose or rose madder or basically anything with rose in the title. And just 2 brushes from my range, a number 12 and number 6 round. And I'll mention the gouache that I'm using later in the video. But this painting will work if you just want to paint it as a traditional watercolour. And here's the pencil drawing, and as usual a free drawing template is available from my website, a link in the description below. Off we go, and I'm starting by lightly spraying this flower area with clean water. Now using my number 12 brush I'm just putting in some blobby shapes for the flowers. Whenever I'm painting flowers, I always paint them first because I want to make sure they go down on white paper to make them as bright as possible. If I painted the green first and then layered these washes on top, then obviously they'd be very dull, watercolour being a transparent medium. And another light spray just to keep the paint moving. And you can see that light spray of water is just softening some of the edges so everything doesn't look too defined and obvious. And here I've just mixed in a little touch of magenta into my yellow just to give a slight orangey feel. And remember, your photo should be there just as a guide, don't try and copy it exactly. Now for the lavender here, and any purple will do. And of course we know that lavender, or lavandula to give it its proper name, is a very popular aromatic drought-tolerant garden plant. Used as culinary herbs and for extraction of essential oils, they're also very popular with bees, butterflies and other pollinators.
Don't pretend you know about lavender.
Yeah, anyway, you can see I've painted them in this sort of fan shape as if they're all coming to a central point. Now for the tree here, and I'm just part wetting this area here with clean water, then dropping in my normal mix of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue. Nice big broad brush strokes, keeping it loose, keeping your brush moving quickly. And I have used a little touch of sap green in the mix just to brighten it slightly. And for this darker green I simply added more cobalt blue into the mix. And even more here. And of course a bit of random splatting doesn't go amiss. And here I'm using this nice dark value to give me the shape of the top of those flowers. And here for a bit of warmth I'm dropping into the wet a touch of burnt sienna. And I'm using the point of my number 12 brush here just to get those more detailed leaves. So I'm really trying to get a nice loose feel with my brush strokes today, so I'm really not labouring on this for too long. Now for this bush here, extra brightness again, adding in some sap green. And dropping in a nice dark green along the bottom here. And another favourite technique of mine, using the sharpened wooden end of my brush to scratch and score in some grass details. Of course you could just use a wooden stick, but I like having it on the end of my brush because I know it's always there and I won't lose it. Next for the stony path, and I'll list the colours I'm using below, using my 12 brush and just getting it down quickly. And here using a damp clean brush to just lift out some light. Next, although it's not in the original photograph, I'm just painting in this cast shadow from a tree that we can't see. Cast shadows always add a bit of interest and drama. And still into the wet, I'm splatting in with my directional splat just some texture to suggest some stony ground. Nice and watery burnt sienna here for the wall in the background. Try not to fiddle too much and remember to let the paint do its thing. So just to darken the shadow here, I've added a touch of Payne's Grey into the burnt umber. And as I always say, use the biggest brush you feel comfortable with. It'll just stop you putting in unnecessary detail. So just to darken this shadow colour, I've just dropped a little bit of cobalt blue into the burnt umber. Burnt umber again, and I'm fairly carefully painting around the tree shape here, but I'm really not too concerned if I leave some little specks of white. It can all help to add a nice loose effect. A much stronger consistency along the roof edge here. Now it's dry along the bottom here. I'm just putting in a few hard edge splats, and if they're a little bit too obvious, just dab out with a tissue. Now for these tree branches and trunk, I'm using a mix of burnt umber and cobalt blue, which will give me a nice deep dark brown, and still using my number 12 brush. And just blending the bottom here with clean water. So here a nice watery mix of yellow ochre, but if you prefer a little more transparency in your goldy colours, you could use some raw sienna. So now we need to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break, and as we're at a priory, it's got to be an Abbot Ale. Okay, so now for the greenery around the plants, and I'm starting by just wetting some of these areas here, just to make sure the paint keeps moving. And the same again, using a darker green for the shadows and giving the contrast with the flowers below. And even while it's still wet, I'm using my number 6 brush and just dabbing in a little bit of magenta, just to see what happens. And I'm trying out here dropping a little dollop of gouache into the wet just to get an interesting out of focus white flower. And here with my purple again, a little bit of detail on the lavender. And continuing on with the foliage in the same way that I painted the plants above.
Well, the smoke just settled down when you appeared. It made my vision crystal clear. If I'm missing my destination, well, that's alright with me, 'cause now there's somewhere else I gotta be. Well, even if I met you in another life, still feel like I would end up with you. You got this kind of energy that makes me smile. I just wanna settle down with you, my marigold. You're marigold and my marigold. You're marigold and
Scoring again here with the end of my brush.
style is classic in a modern way. Never dance with you, I dance the night away. If we keep our good intentions and sell what we don't need, then life will bring us more than we can keep. Well, even if I met you in another life, still feel like I would end up with you. You got this kind of energy that makes me smile. I just want to settle down with you.
And I am trying to get some really dark values underneath the flowers here, just to help bring them out.
My marigold, your marigold,
And I mustn't forget this little wooden edge to the flower bed here. Now for the window here, and I'm dropping in a fairly light value of burnt umber and Payne's Grey, painting it all over the window. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to be dropping in to that left hand side a really nice thick creamy mixture and let it slowly blend across. And then continuing on still with my number 12 brush for some further darker details. Now I would like to take this opportunity of thanking the staff at Michelin Priory, or is it Michelin Priory? I'm never sure. Anyway, for making the day run so smoothly, but also to all of you who attended. We really did have a fabulous day. Now, we have had plein air painting days at the Priory several times. I think this might be our 4th, and some of you may have done tutorials from previous years. But for those of you who may be interested, at the end of this video I'll show a few of my paintings from the Priory that I've done at various times during the year. Now it is tempting to switch to a smaller brush, but I'm showing here how fine a line that you can actually paint with a number 12, if it's got a decent point. Having said that, I am now switching to my number 6 round. And I'm using various shades of brown just by using some burnt umber and adding in some cobalt blue when I want to darken it. And these wooden struts are the ones that are behind, and they're darker because they're in shadow. Incidentally, if you're wondering what this little building is, well, in fact it was a rather ornate covering for an old stone well. Rather beautiful, really. Just putting in a few subtle suggestions here of some wood grain. And this is stonework on the side. Just a few more shadow details on the lavender. Right, so I feel as if I've gone as far as I can with the traditional watercolour. So I have collected a few sets of gouache over the years, but I am conscious that I don't want to add too many new colours to the painting. I still want to keep it a fairly limited palette. So what I'm going to do is put a big blob of white gouache into my palette and then mix it with my conventional watercolours. So as we know, gouache is really just opaque watercolour, so it's going to mix beautifully well with our standard watercolours. And this way we're going to keep all the colours sympathetic with what we've already painted. But unlike watercolour, you can paint light onto dark, which is a huge advantage for things like these leaves. So in the eyes of the purists, this may take it away from being 100% watercolour, but so what? I think it's always good to try out new things and experiment. And here I've just added a little more white into the mix to get some slightly lighter highlights. I mean, this has got to be better than using masking fluid, and you'll definitely get a more natural brush stroke. Now I'm using some white straight from the tube. Now these tiles are a little bit bright at the moment, but it does dry a little more transparent. Now for these leaded lights, this is a fairly watery mix of the white, so I'm hoping that it will dry slightly greyer and not so obvious. Yes, already you can see it's reducing in strength, so I'm just tickling in a little bit more. Little highlight along the top of these ridge tiles, and a lot of these faces are being hit by the light, so I'm just putting some white directly in here. Remember here, you don't need to paint in every stone, always leave something for the viewer's imagination. Now for some opaque pink, so I'm just taking my white gouache and mixing it in with my magenta. And I'm just adding some lighter highlights into the flowers. And exactly the same with the cadmium yellow. And I'm particularly looking for areas where I can add these yellow blobs onto a dark background. Some more thick and gooey white straight from the tube to put some highlights here on the path. And the odd little stone or pebble. and some nice bright white highlights where the light is hitting the top of all these flowers. And the odd little white daisy or whatever here and there. Highlights on the lavender. So looking at it now, it's finished. I'm thinking I like the softness up here in this top right hand corner, so I want to do something similar down here on the bottom edge. Just taking a damp tissue and smoothing and blending what I've got here, sort of sends it out of focus, and hopefully will bring more attention to the flowers in the middle, which is more of the focal point of the painting. And besides, it's given me a nice area to put my signature in. There we go, all done, and this one in just over 3 hours. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. Whether you paint it as a conventional watercolour or you add in some body colour with some gouache or acrylics, it's up to you. But the important thing is that you make it your own. So, coming up now, as promised, are some further paintings that I've done over the years of the lovely Michelin Brari. But in the meantime, please don't forget to like, subscribe. I have invested in some high-tech computer graphics. Leave a comment. I do read every single one, can't always reply to them all, and of course I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Have a great week everyone. Cheers.